Richard Charles here again. These next couple of lessons we're going to look at a piece called Come Together, which was by the Beatles. It was the first track on their 1979 album Abbey Road. It's one that really is worth considering to learn if you are going to be doing GCSE music. It's one I use for most of my GCSE students because it lasts for 4 minutes at least. There's a couple of technical challenges in it that we can sort out over the course of the next 2 lessons. And once you've got your head around those, it's just a question of knowing the format of the song, about where you go to at the beginning and at the end. So, hope you enjoy these next 2 lessons about Come Together.
Come Together features Ringo Starr, who was the Beatles drummer. He was often underrated because was probably considered to be outshone by the talents of his colleagues in the group. He used to look like this once upon a time, and these days you'll often see him looking a little bit more like this. He made quite a little bit of money from his time with the Beatles, and the drum parts he chose to play always served the song really well. This particular example is quite melodic in its use of the tom-toms, so it sounds like it's part of the tune, and it also responds to another typical melodic bass line from Paul McCartney. So the bass line kind of rises up and the tom-toms fall back down again. So if you can listen out for that when you're performing it as well. The first pattern in Come Together happens throughout a lot of the piece. It starts off with the bass drum and the ride cymbal for 2 beats. Then it goes around the hi-hat, the middle tom-tom and the floor tom-tom. I'll just show you how the whole pattern goes to start with. There are various things that we can do to practice that technique of moving around the drums, and also to do some things that are based on triplets. So the first example that I've got for you is just moving triplets between the snare drum, high tom-tom and the floor tom-tom. And this is our little tickety-boo rhythm that goes tickety-boo, 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 tickety-boo. Try that one a little bit slower. The next example introduces the sextuplets, which are written as 2 lots of 3, just moving again snare drum and the 2 high tones this time. So there's a few more notes in a row. So I'll play you up to speed to start with. And then a little bit slower. Notice through all of this I'm making sure that my wrists are nice and low and that I'm playing nice and relaxed between the 2. I'm trying to make sure that there isn't any tension there, which is why I'm not going straight into the first rhythm. So I'm trying to think of it as being smooth or legato around the drums. If I didn't have relaxed wrists and there was a little bit of tension there, then the tension might make it sound a bit more like this. Which isn't the sound that we need. So try and keep it smooth and relaxed all the way through. The next exercise is going to use a little bit of a hi-hat as well. If you listen to the original, which I hope you do, of Mr. Ringo Starr playing on his hi-hat, they aren't all even, and it's certainly not the case that the first one's the loudest. What he tends to do is put a little bit of emphasis, almost like a line over the note of the final quaver. So I like to use this part of the stick and relax the pressure of my left foot a little bit, just to see if that hi-hat can speak a little bit more. Okay, so the whole of this pattern would sound. next example is nearly the same, but instead of me using the mounted tom-toms, I'm going to go from my middle tom-tom onto the floor tom-tom. And finally the whole pattern, again starting with bass drum and the ride cymbal first, over onto the hi-hat, looking out to put a bit of emphasis on the final note, and then as smooth as I can between the middle tom-tom and the floor tom-tom, taking note that the dynamic is only mezzo forte. Next, I'll play you the first 3 lines of Come Together with the repeat. If we just have a quick think about the bass drum in line 3, it's a dotted quaver, semi-quaver rhythm, and what I'm trying to do is to make sure that the semi-quaver is the quietest of those 3 beats. So I'm going to see if I can get the bass drum for the semi-quaver just to be quite close to the bass drum skin, and then for the rest of the notes it's going to be a little bit further back. I'll just see if that works. Might have been a bit exaggerated, I'll just write one more time. So that will just help it to groove a little bit more. I'll just see if I can play the semi-quaver louder than the rest of it to show you what it can sound like if you go the wrong way around. So again, make sure we don't have any tension in the foot, to make sure that we can always feel where the pulse is, which is on the main beat, and then the semi-quaver is just a little bit of a decoration. Okay, so we're going to leave it there for this week's lesson. That was part 1 of Come Together. If you want to get working on those, like I said at the very beginning, lots of what we've worked on here will be able to be applied to the rest of the piece as well. And don't forget, you can always slow down on YouTube if you want to watch anything a little bit slower, and you can repeat things as often as you like. Next week we'll focus more on page 2, which has a couple of syncopated fill-ins that we'll talk about, and also a lot of improvised fill-ins, so I'll give you some ideas about that. So we'll finish off Come Together in next week's lesson. Good luck with your practice now.